Well, now we're going to use what we learned about reference angles to help us find trigonometric values for special angles. And of course, special angles are defined as 30, 45, and 60 degree angles. And then depending upon what quadrant we're in, that tells us whether the trig functions are going to be positive or negative. Now I'm going to start down here where we got these quadrants, but I want you to think of it like this. All students take calculus. So that in quadrant 1, all of our trig functions are, in fact, positive. In quadrant 2, our sine functions, and when I say sine functions, I'm talking about both the sine function and its reciprocal, which is the cosecant, are positive. But our cosine and secant, those are reciprocal functions, they're going to be negative. And our tangent and our cotangent are also going to be negative. So just our sine functions, the sine function and the cosecant, which is the reciprocal of the sine function, are going to be positive. Everything else is going to be negative. In quadrant 3, the tangent and cotangent functions, all students take. There we go, quadrant 3. So we're talking about tangent and its reciprocal, the cotangent. Those will be positive, but the sine and cosine functions are going to be negative. And then in quadrant 4, calculus, C, that tells us then if we're in quadrant 4, our cosine and our secant functions will be positive values, I should say, and but our sine and our tangent and their reciprocals will be negative. Now we got this chart here that gives us the trig values for these special angles 30, 45, and 60. And so how this relates to our reference angle, we kind of combine these two. We get our reference angle and then which quadrant are we going to be in. And that we can pretty well come up with what the trig value is going to be. So in this first example here, we've got the cosine of 135 degrees. Well, the fact that it's 135, well, let's do it. I guess I would do it the long way. We're in quadrant 2, which means our cosine functions are going to be negative. And in quadrant 2, if I'm in degree mode, I can find the reference angle by 180 minus theta in this case, which is 135. And that's going to equal 45. So the cosine function at 45 degrees is the square root of 2 over 2. However, we're in quadrant 2, and in quadrant 2, the cosine functions are going to be negative. So the value that we can have for our trigonometric value is then therefore going to be negative square root of 2 over 2. Now, if our reference angle for something in the third quadrant, that would also be negative. If it's a cosine function, it'd be negative square root of 2 over 2. And if we were in the fourth quadrant and had a reference angle of 45 degrees, well, then it would become positive. All students take calculus. Now, what about the tangent of 5 pi over 6? Well, we know that here at the x-axis, that would be pi. So we're less than 1 full pi. So we're greater than pi over 2, which would be up here at the 90 degree mark. Pi over 20, I don't know where I got that. Pi over 2. Okay, so, and also this, since we're talking about something over 6, that automatically tells me that it's going to relate somewhere to a 30 degree angle. Now, just for fun of it, then let's say we got pi. Our reference angle is minus 5 pi over 6, which pi is the same as 6 pi over 6. So our reference angle is pi over 6. And again, when we got radians here and we've got a denominator of 6, that's going to relate to a 30-degree angle. So, what is our tangent of 30 degrees, or pi over 6? Well, it's right there. It's square root of 3 over 3. Then I got to ask myself again, okay, well, what quadrant am I in? Well, I'm going to be in quadrant 2, okay, because it's 5 pi over 6. It was my actual radian measure. So I'm going to be in quadrant 2, and in quadrant 2, the only value, trig values that are going to be positive are sine and cosecant. Everything else is going to be negative. So my trig value for 5 pi over 6 then is negative square root of 3 over 3, by virtue of it being a tan with tangent of a angle that has a 30-degree or a pi over 6 reference angle lying in the second quadrant. The more you practice, the better you become. And then keep these little charts handy so that you can use them for reference. There's one more I could have put in here, I think. We'll get it to you, where it gives us the relationship between radians and degrees of special angles. I think it was in chapter 1 or 12.1 or 12.2.